Hello, today I'm going to give you a diver's guide to dive watches. Hello everyone and welcome back to Amber Azul TV. So as you know from watching my channel, I love coral reefs, I love scuba diving, and I like to spend a lot of time underwater, either diving or snorkeling whenever I'm on vacation. So I'm going to go through a little bit of my modest dive watch collection. I'm going to tell you about what to look for when diving with a dive watch and just share with you my kind of favorite timepieces. So first and foremost, obviously, if you're a recreational diver, if you're diving more than a couple of times a year, you really should own a dive computer. And a dive computer is kind of, to me, indispensable. It's your second best friend underwater, your first best friend being your dive buddy. And so the dive computer is going to tell you information such as your depth, temperature. More importantly, it keeps track of how long you've spent at any given depth, and it calculates how much time you have before you have to worry about decompression sickness. So a dive watch underwater to me is indispensable because it's a nice backup, a more robust backup to your computer. So the dive watch's only job is to kind of keep track of how much you've spent underwater, and so it doesn't do a lot of fancy calculations that your computer does, but it's mechanical and it's less likely to fail, in my opinion, than the dive computer. So if the dive computer it has a battery, if the battery runs out, or when you're replacing the battery, if you accidentally get a hair on the seal, this could flood. And in that event, I like to always have a mechanical watch underwater, which is far more robust to kind of flooding. So the watches don't tell you how much you have before a decompression. You need to consult charts with that. But obviously, if you've been diving and you're looking at your watch and you know that as a specific depth you have like 20 minutes left, then if this dies, then you could start using this to kind of count the 20 minutes and use this as a timer underwater. All right, what to look for in a dive watch. Let me just introduce the watches before I tell you about the features. So this is the Seiko SKX009. And this is the watch that I probably dive with the most. I've been to about 100 feet underwater with this watch. This is the Christopher Ward Trident GMT C60 600 meters, and this is the Omega Seamster Professional 300 diver. So all of these have seen action in the water, and maximum depth about 100 feet. I've taken this one about 80 feet, and the Omega I've only taken it to about 60 feet, but all of them are rated for much more than that. All right, so here we go. So one of the most important features that you want to look for is a screw down crown and crown guards. So these are called crown guards, and the crown is actually kind of screwed in. So there's me unscrewing it. There's the crown out. So now you could actually like set the watch and do all kinds of fun, set the date. But then once you're done, you press it in and you screw it in, and this is now watertight. So crown guards and a screw down crown are a must. You want to have a watch that's got a dive rating of at least 200 meters. So if a watch is rated at 200 and it's got a screw down crown, then to me I think you could easily take this scuba diving without any issues. Let me show you another watch that looks like a dive watch but doesn't have a screw down crown. So this is another Seiko. It looks like a dive watch, right? It's got this fancy bezel, which we'll talk about later, but you see the crown doesn't have guards and it doesn't screw down. So you just kind of push it in and push it out. The problem with this is that it doesn't matter, it's saying it's rated for 100 meters, but I would never take this underwater. You have to have a crown guard and a screw down crown before you could take any watch underwater. So the other feature that you want to have on a dive watch is a unidirectional rotating bezel. So that means the bezel rotates in one direction, and let's say you're going to go underwater, so you rotate your bezel and you lined it up with the minute hand, and there you go. And now when you go underwater, your bezel, the position of the minute hand over the bezel is keeping track of how much you've actually spent at depth. So if the minute hand went to here, that means you've been underwater for 20 minutes. If the minute hand goes to there, that means you've been underwater for 40 minutes, and so on and so forth. So the rotating bezel is really key for timing your dive. So essentially, these are kind of the three features that you want to have in a dive watch: crown guards and screw down crown, unidirectional rotating bezel, and water resistance of at least 200 meters. This watch is on a leather strap. This watch is on a mesh strap, but if I'm going to go diving with a watch, I replace the straps with what's called a NATO strap, something that looks like this. They come in many kind of shapes and colors, which kind of makes dressing up and dressing down the watch and changing the look of the watch really easy and fun. And what the NATO strap does for you is effectively it makes the watch really difficult to lose underwater. So with any kind of traditional strap, if one of these pins that holds the strap falls off, then the whole watch kind of plunks down into depth. And it's not a big deal if you're just wearing your watch around your house and one of the pins falls off. The watch is right there. But obviously, if you're diving and a pin falls off, your watch could be like going down to depth that you can't go and retrieve it. So if you're diving in open water and your watch falls off, forget about it. You're not gonna like go back and retrieve it. So with a NATO strap, let me just show you. If one of the pins falls off, the watch is still kind of held in place by the other pin. So you would have to have essentially two pins falling off for you to lose this watch, which is unlikely. The reason that I have three dive watches is, well, one, I'm a bit of a dive watch nut, but I like to kind of use these in different contexts. So the Seiko is the least expensive, the Omega is the most expensive, and Trident is, well, maybe not halfway. It's relatively inexpensive, but it's a lot cheaper than the Omega. So out of the three, I typically use the Seiko a lot. I mean, it's inexpensive. If I lose it, it's only a few $100. It's not a big deal, and it's really kind of indestructible. But whenever I'm diving in a place that's kind of in a different time zone than where I currently live, I like to use the Christopher Ward because the GMT function does allow you to kind of keep track of a second time zone. If you notice that the bezel on the GMT is marked in 24 hours, but you could still use it to kind of do elapsed time on a dive, right? So if you're diving and all right, so if I'm starting my diving now, then you use the index as your point of reference, and now I just kind of measure things. Imagine this as a pi. If my minute hand was here, then I've been in the water for half an hour. If it was there, it's 45 minutes. So despite it not having minute increments along the bezel, it's still really easy. And the benefit is when I get out of water, when I reset this to 12, then the bezel is telling me my time in the second time zone. So it's 1100 hours, or 1115 in my home zone. So Omega is also a fabulous dive watch. It's got the helium escape valve, although, if you're a recreational diver, you're never going to really need to use that feature because we're not certified to do to work at depth where you would need the helium escape valve. But I do like to use it occasionally, but honestly, I do prefer to dive with the Seiko the most. I think that it's just kind of underwater as a dive watch. It's the most legible, and I've seriously taken this to 100 feet underwater, no issues whatsoever. Really easy to see. The lume on it is superb. All right, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy diving with your dive watch, please let me know, or better yet, post some videos or pictures, and I'll see you around for more reef related videos.